Hey teachers, Haley here at Teacher's Pet with part 4 in the latest series, which is a build and a tell, which is how I have been using kind of the Teacher's Pet tools for my online asynchronous course prep and course build out. So the first few parts in this series, we set up using my course building spreadsheet. So you can, check out those past parts and get your version of the spreadsheet at teacherspet.tech. But we really went through and, I mapped out my learning outcomes in a tab, and then we figured out the actual schedule. The last video, we really focused on the projects and how that, very ungrading kind of progressive bundling system was going to work in my Canvas shell. And now in this video, I'm ready to get the actual project details figured out with my rubric. And the main driver of Teacher's Pet, it started with two ways. One was PAL, the kind of chat. And so you'll see that in future videos when I'm ready, to get all my materials done for the personal assistant in learning chat. But the second piece was rubric support, especially since I like to do a lot of, ungrading, very choice-driven project designs and course designs. I'm creating a lot of rubrics because I just have a lot of projects that I have to do. So the rubric building, just always took me a long time as kind of one of those significant pain points and sort of brain drain areas. So our rubric builder is kind of one of the core pieces of Teacher's Pet that's just helped me, free up some of my cognitive creative space so I can make even more projects and not feel so overwhelmed. Gives me just a really good head start, because rubrics can be one of those things that are challenging when you're just starting from nothing and starting from scratch. And when we get the rubrics, kind of wrong, it has of course big impacts then on the assessment and how students understand their work and how well we actually are measuring things like our learning outcomes. So this is a big stage where Teacher's Pet, I definitely lean on and actually use it the most. And the main thing that we are also really, testing and in that early access kind of period with a lot of work still to be done. But I'm going to, flip over and just walk you through how I set up, one of my assignments and you kind of through the app and the rubric and how I exported it and everything. I'll just talk you through some of our thoughts on how my project build is going. And I would love to know, in the comments below, just let us know, what are the big pain points in your course prep and your course build? How do you approach rubrics? What are the things that, are so important, but low-key dread a little bit as you go through? All right, let's set up some project rubrics. All right, so now I'm working on actually creating my assignments, which, I'm just writing an assignment sheet. That part's not all that exciting. But, I'm going through, and there's just a few things that I want to make sure to do for my assignment sheets that will be uploaded to Teacher's Pet. And I will, kind of be going through and redoing the ones just slightly, just for more style design that students will actually read and be able to download. So this is the set that is just for the computer to read. So I don't have to worry about making it look super nice, but I do want to make sure that I have very clear headings and subheadings, so that way PAL with the retrieval augmented generation will be able to kind of pull the correct tokens a little bit more easily and chunk things out when it's citing as well. And then so that way the rubric builder can go through and figure out and parse where the requirements are, and it just makes everything a little bit smoother. And so I'm thinking about, okay, for this one assignment example, I definitely wanted to have things like the structure, so that way PAL will be able to help them out if they ask questions about, what should I put in section 2? That should kind of help it retrieve and predict kind of the answer a little bit more strongly. And then I like to put, the scope, the due dates, all of that information just needs to be, of course, explicit so students know, but very, very clear. So that way the AI can parse and split and match up kind of just all the tokens, correctly and come up with stronger, more accurate, valid responses. So I'm just kind of working on giving them all that sort of information in detail. I also am thinking ahead a little bit to what questions students might ask. And again, writing that into this assignment sheet so PAL will be able to pick it up and give them that response as well. So I'm kind of thinking, okay, if somebody says, when is the project for Unit 1 due, and how should I get it done, right? I'll be able to pull this chunk under due date. There's a very clear, okay, October 4th is suggested. You should really be working on your 2 examples in September and October though, as we kind of go through. So once I finish my assignment sheet itself, then it's time for me to actually upload it into Teacher's Pet. And this is what, ends up saving me a little bit of time and energy. So when I'm in my Teacher's Pet app, I just can upload it to the new, just to my dashboard in the site. And then what it's going to do is take kind of the document that I have uploaded, my blog project document. I just select the one that I want a rubric on. And right now it's like it's the only one in there, but I will be doing this over and over for a lot of different projects. So I select it, tell it, hey, generate a rubric for me. And it does take, a minute. So give it a little bit of time, but then I get this nice editable, rubric draft that just, again, I don't know, maybe, you might not have the same pain points I do, but certainly I just get really stuck and I'm like, I got to start a whole rubric. And so, it sets up what does functional look like. So full credit for that. Developing draft in for my students. What that will end up meaning is they need to be functional down every single thing in the rubric. And if not, they'll just be revising and fixing it until it is functional and they get it complete. So after I've edited the title, and I'm just reading through everything and making the edits right directly here in the web app before, I'm going to save it or anything. And so I really hated, obviously a lot of the chatbots and whatnot can make rubrics, but I don't think they're very good, or it's a lot of reprompt, and it's like, well, I'd rather just edit the parts that I want to edit than have to reprompt. So that's really what kind of the goal here was, a nice editable export so you don't have to mess around with reprompting and chatting all the time. You can just fix what you want to fix. So that's what I'm just going through and checking, okay, is it nice and verb focused? Teacher's Pet should, and it's, sort of trained and expected to go through and, kind of find what would be, or what it seems like are the learning outcomes, the good verbs. So of course the, stronger you write your assignment sheets to be just very clear and here are the outcomes of it, a little bit easier and better it does, but it's looking through the requirements and is set to give you a nice verb focused criteria rather than those big noun groups. So instead of being requirements, it's did you meet all the requirements? It's no, it breaks it down to the actual skills that are required for your students to have completed what you outlined in the assignment sheet. So I have, I needed them to publish these pieces of content because it's going to go in their portfolio, and then kind of writing that out, or provide thoughtful analysis instead of a section analysis. Okay. Which, analysis is kind of one of those weird noun and verbs, but you know what I mean? Instead of just a big chunk of body, it's actually what are you providing? And you see I'm reading through it. It does, duplicate and pick some things up. Again, it is AI, so you need to go through and edit, validate, update. It's just meant to speed up that course prep process by giving me, a pretty solid start that then I just need to edit and update instead of writing all of these just from scratch by hand, which just takes longer than it needs to. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of going through and, kind of combining some stuff, updating some stuff. This is also with the clear personal voice is the way that I have chosen to address my students using potentially Gen AI on their projects. I am okay with it as long as, right, that final product hits everything it needs to hit, and is very clear and direct and specific. And that's where most of the models then fall apart, because they are meant to be, right, general, predictions of what probably sounds best given the input. And so when I say things and then grade them on hey, I do want to hear your personal voice in terms of style and tone. And if it feels that anyone or anything, AI, could produce this work, without grounding it in a good like connection to you, your experience, right? How I know you like speak and talk and write, then we start to run into more of those problems. But if they use a Gen AI tool and then go through and edit it and update it and expand and add, right, their own kind of choices and style, and again, very specific examples and connections to the project, like I have no problem with that. I think that's a great tool, especially for my senior students who are about to go out in the workplace and will, be confronted with, and in some of the fields and cases that they are going to work with, maybe even be expected, right, to enhance their workflow with AI. So that's how I address it, is kind of going from this more looking at the final output, rather than, I'm not going to be out here trying to accuse or be chasing, I'm just not. It's more of, hey, here's what you produced. And, here's where it's really great and concrete and unique. And here's where, it's actually pretty generalized and vague and not telling me that much. And we'll have that kind of conversation and helping them revise to create higher quality work, at a faster kind of clip using the tools available. Cool. And then, sometimes I have to fully rewrite and really change, a section, as it does with a rubric. That's, at the end of the day, is still our work and our jobs to do that. But having this head start definitely helped me think through a lot of stuff in a really kind of helpful way. So then the last steps, after I am happy with my rubric, and feel just really good about all of the content, then I hit that format button and save it as the Canvas, because I'm using the Canvas LMS, and there is that very specific way we have to do it. So I grab my rubric, and actually in Canvas, if you don't have this option available, and you can only create rubrics, boo, not fun. You just need to go into your settings and make sure to turn on the enhanced rubric option as a feature preview. And if your institution doesn't have that available, oh, I'm so sorry, you need to petition them to help you out. But basically I'm just going through and making sure to enable all of kind of the new stuff that's being rolled out, which gives me this option to import a rubric. And so Teacher's Pet saved it in that correct template file already. So you can see it's like right away, Unit 1 blog project, everything just imported in there. Now, sometimes with imports, things get a little bit funky. And so I do have to just go in and edit the order things got out of place. But luckily with this new enhance, it's a drag and drop feature. So I just needed to move, the functional developing and draft up and do that for each one. So of course, again, there's always gonna be a little bit of work, but this definitely sped up my workflow compared to when I used to, build the rubrics by hand and then have to go in and do that. The last thing is I do make it unscored on my rubrics, and so that way everything's incomplete as long as they hit every single element of their rubric. And then I turned on the ability for them to do a self-assessment so they can check their own work before they submit it. And I'll just be kind of rinse and repeating doing that for every single project this semester, and I will be able to knock that out in, like a day instead of maybe a whole week dedicated to just rubric building. So I'm pretty excited about that. All right, so even though that was just one project rubric, I'm going to do that for all of the projects in that course build that I have set up. So it definitely is going to save me a lot of time, since I need to basically rinse and repeat that like 15 more times just for all the choices and tasks and options in this class. But I've also, used that for all of my course kind of builds. And again, I love it because it just allows me to check, right, that kind of time-consuming pain point off my course prep list, so I can spend way more time on the other pieces, right, on building good videos and lectures and making even more project options and all of that kind of good stuff. So in the kind of rest of this series, I'm just going to be working on a bunch of stuff, and so I'll keep kind of recording certain elements of it, but we'll probably close out this series with part 5, where I will show you kind of the finished product and walk you through the class with some of the other tools and things that I used, but especially when I have PAL ready. So part 5 will be final walkthrough with setting up PAL once I get all the documents ready and done, and how my students will be able to ask their questions to my narrow, very tailored and closed sort of personal assistant in learning, so that way they won't have so many questions. So I'm really excited for that. Thanks for joining me on this journey, and I'll see you next time. Until then, I hope that you have a great class.